to bring all of this together into the good news story of what it is that Christ does for us on the cross. Bring us to Golgotha for just a second. So
so the story of the story of the cross, like I alluded to before, in some ways it's just it kind of collapses all of this together, because what it does is it flips the fall, right? It flips the fall into glory, and Christ does it in many ways. There are different aspects of what he does that is kind of flipping the fall into glory, and he changes the fall. On the one hand, it's weird because you'd think like Christ is bringing us back into the garden, and definitely he's doing that, but he's not doing it in a strange way, which is that he's also filling the world of the fall with himself. And so he's also making he's transforming images into the fall into images of glory. And that's what's the wildest aspect of it. And that's why, it's so hard to understand Christianity. But once you kind of get a glimpse of that, you kind of realize that Christianity is all about death. It's all about death to yourself, right? It's, the martyrs. Why are the martyrs? Why do we like martyrs? It's like they die, they go and they get eaten by wild beasts. They seem to be actually going through the curse that was given to Adam.
Yeah.
Like they're ripped apart. All this, you're like, what is happening? Why is that part of something that is? Because we realize that there's a relationship between death and glory. Interestingly enough, this is actually really fascinating. People can look this up in the St. Vladimir's Press little translation of St. Ephraim's The Hymns on Paradise. There's a beautiful introduction by Sebastian Brock at the beginning. And in this introduction, he asks question about this idea that we have in the Christian tradition about the garments of glory, right? We have this idea in the Christian tradition that Adam and Eve in the garden had garments of glory, and that when we say they were naked, they were actually clothed in glory. You see that in St. Gregory of Nyssa, you see that in several of the fathers, and that when they fall, they were given garments of skin. But the question is, where does that come from? Because where do you see that in the Bible? You don't see that. And Sebastian Brock points to first century rabbinical interpretations that talk about these garments of glory and where they get it from. And where they get it from is the text that says that they were given garments of skin. That in fact, the word garment, the word skin in that context means something like it has to do with extension. So it could be interpreted both as raise, and also death. And so there's this idea that the rabbi saw the same thing as being garments of glory and garments of death, right? So you have these weird interpretations. You've probably seen this. In the West, there are images of Moses when he comes down the mountain with horns on his head.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's because there's a relationship between rays of light and horns of animal.
Interesting.
And so there's this idea that when Moses came down, that he was disfigured, but that it was also glory. So what I'm getting to is that there seems to be right there in the text and in the tradition, this idea that there's actually a relationship between death and glory, that in fact, one can become the other. So you can think of it as the move into multiplicity, right? The move into multiplicity can be either a breakdown of one into the many, or it can be the radiance of the one into the many. And therefore, that's why the symbolism of death in Christianity gets collapsed, where in fact, we recapture the symbolism of death into its image as glory. And that it seems so paradoxical when you see it, because you're like, why do we have relics? What the heck is going on? Why do we kiss these dead people's bodies? What is happening? But it's there's something about this idea that in fact, this body, this corrupt body
is emanating,
can be a vehicle for glory. This garment of skin that we have, this biological dead body, can become a vehicle for glory. And that's what's happening on the cross. That's what's happening with the martyrs. And that's also what's happening with relics.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's weird because it's so paradoxical, but it's hard. We're so used to some of the things that we believe as Christians that we sometimes we don't see how they're how they fit together like this beautiful puzzle. We say yeah, of course we martyrs. Of course we celebrate these people that died for their faith. Like, what? You celebrate people getting eaten by lions? Like, you understand why the Romans were like, these people are crazy.
That's
But once you see
right.
that, in fact, like, that is actually the structure of reality. That those that give themselves, that are willing to die to themselves, even in the small ways, not just in the getting eaten by lion way, but like the small ways, they participate in a higher glory necessarily. As much, even the Montreal Canadiens, like even the Montreal Canadian player that sacrifices his skill to sacrifices himself for the team will receive glory from the Montreal Canadiens that he would not have if he tried to just hold it for himself.
Right.
But that is true of everything. It's true of your family, of your job, and ultimately it's true of our salvation. It's true of the church.
Absolutely.
I mean, the Lord says it, right? The seed has to be buried.
Must die.
Absolutely.
That's
Must
right.
die.
Absolutely.